Hello again. I'm happy to continue our lessons on using thought records related to cognitive behavioral therapy. Today we're going to focus on the crucial part of doing thought records. So we call this thought record part 2. This is part 8 in our series of talks. This has to do with the utilization of the thought record part 1 and then learning how to challenge our automatic thought so that we are able to make some possible changes with a more balanced thought. So to begin with, it is best to focus on one automatic thought at a time. So usually we pick the hot automatic thought, the one that has the most emotional impact on us. We have usually circled this hot automatic thought in thought record part 1. Now we're going to learn about how this thought record part 2 works. So in reviewing thought record part 1, we remember that we talk about a situation, we describe the triggering situation briefly, then we write down our emotions, our feelings, and we rate the intensity of these emotional feelings. And then we also write down our thoughts. Thoughts and feelings are different because feelings are one-word descriptors of an internal state, whereas thoughts are complete phrases or sentences. And then we circle the hot thought. The hot thought, if you remember, is the thought that is most closely related to the most intense feeling. It's the one that bothers us the most, that's most difficult to deal with. And then in the sequence of thought record part 1, which is a little bit different than Podesky's, I add a behavioral response where we write down what we did in that situation and how effective it was. Sometimes understanding that our response was not so effective will provide a motivation for us to make a change. So as we look at thought record part 1 again in review, we see the situation, we see the feelings, we see the automatic thoughts, and we also see our initial behavioral response. You'll notice that the feelings, we can rate them. We always rate the feelings. We can do that on a scale of 0 to 10 or 0 to 100. In the automatic thoughts, sometimes we rate them, but sometimes it's just very obvious what the hot thought is. Now to begin our thought record part 2, we're ready to focus on the automatic hot thought. We look at the evidence first that supports our hot thought, automatic thought. And then we are going to look at the evidence that doesn't support our hot thought 100%. And then we're going to come up with a more balanced thought. And then we're going to look at what behavioral experiments we might do to test out the more balanced thought, to see if the new thought is more effective than the old one. And we're also going to re-rate our feelings from thought record part 1 to see if the change actually was effective at helping us to feel better. So again, now we're looking at thought record part 2 in its entirety. First, the box that has to do with the evidence that the automatic thought is true. Then we're going to look at the evidence that the automatic thought is not 100% true. And then we're going to look at balanced thought, combining the evidence from the 2 prior columns. And then we're going to look at a new behavioral response and see if it's effective. And then we're going to re-rate the feelings that are the same feelings that we had in thought record part 1. So let's begin first with looking more clearly at the evidence that supports our automatic thought, the hot thought. This is an important step because it helps us in 2 ways. First, we expand our understanding of why we feel the way that we do, why we think the way that we do. And we can account for our past experiences. We don't just feel and think the way that we do at random, there's usually some very good reason to do that. And so we validate that we have these good reasons to feel and think the way that we do. Usually we come up with 4 or more pieces of evidence that our automatic thought is true. And we put that in the evidence, the first evidence column. Usually this is not too difficult for people. We're able to really come up with lots of reasons why we think and feel the way that we do. The next box is really the critical one. It's the one that takes the most amount of energy, the most insight, the most awareness. This is the box that really is the crucial one for making changes in our own thinking. It's called the evidence that our automatic thought is not 100% true. It's more challenging, because we have a tendency, when we have a strong emotion and strong thinking, to only see things from one side. Beck called this the emotional valence trick. We only see one side of what's going on. It's hard to see the other side. So we need to challenge ourselves to come up with ways that our thought might not be 100% true. But we're not saying that it's false. It's just that it's not 100% true. It's good to be sincere and to have insight when we do this. Now, because this is so difficult, Greenberger and Podesky have, in their book Mind Over Mood, provided hint boxes that are there to help us examine our thoughts. The following are hints that can help us find out about our automatic thought and how it might not be true 100% of the time. Have we experienced any counter experiences to our automatic thought that might say, oh, in the past, maybe I've had a different experience? What might we say to our best friend about this situation? What would our best friend might say to us? What would we want a good friend to say to us to support us or to help us through something? When I'm not feeling the way that I do I think differently? Or do I think the same way? In the past, what kinds of things did I say to myself to make myself feel better? Is there something different about this situation from past situations? Usually they're not identical, there are different factors. Are there even some small things that might contradict our thought? And finally, some years from now, maybe 5 years from now, will this be important to us? Do I have some strengths in me that might help me get through this period of time so that this situation might not be so troublesome? Another way that we might go about challenging our automatic thoughts is a method that was used from the beginning of cognitive behavioral therapy, before Greenberger and Podesky's book, that we'll find in Aaron Beck's book, the Cognitive Therapy for Depression, or in David Burns's book, Feeling Good, or in his subsequent book, Feeling Good Handbook. These are earlier cognitive behavioral books or cognitive therapy books that were written in the early 1980s, 1979, 1981, 82. So these books are very, very helpful, even though we've come up with different ways of looking at things now, like through Mind Over Mood. But still, the Beck and Burns model of cognitive distortions can be helpful. It was very popular for quite some period of time. The cognitive distortions, there are 10 of them. One is called All or Nothing Thinking by David Burns. This means, either it's all one way or all the other way. Usually things are not quite so dramatic as that they're all one way or all the other way. Sometimes we tend to overgeneralize, make one situation cover a whole range of different situations, or one way of thinking that covers a whole range of thinking. A mental filter is when we just see one side of things, usually the negative side. So when something happens, we just see what's negative about it. We don't see the other qualities. And that brings us to number 4, where if something is positive, we might disqualify it. Jumping to conclusions includes 2 parts, mind reading and the fortune teller error. We jump to conclusions thinking that we can read other people's minds and we know what it is that they're thinking. And the fortune teller error is, well, I can tell the future. I know what's going to happen after this, or I can guess that this is likely to happen. Oftentimes, we tell the future and we have a distorted view. It's too strong. Magnification, catastrophizing, or minimization is another method of being able to, that we use to distort our thinking. Either it's too much, catastrophizing, or it's or nothing at all. Emotional reasoning. I feel it, therefore it must be true. Should statements. I should be this way. Things should be this way. I may label myself or mislabel myself in a negative way. I'm all bad or all wrong. And then personalization. I'm taking things very, very personally. It's all about me. So these are the ways that we try to work on our thinking process to really challenge ourselves. In the next video, we'll look at the more balanced thoughts and give some examples. I look forward to sharing more with you.